Welcome back to the Stat 201 Beyond the Lecture video series. This is going to be lesson 2.2, which is on describing one categorical variable. The biggest and most important thing that I want everyone to learn from this video is how to calculate a sample proportion. After that, we're going to talk about other ways of describing one categorical variable, like using bar graphs or pie charts or a frequency table or a relative frequency table. That being said, this is important because when we talked in the last video about categorical variables, we said that it was either a label or a group. And so this entire video is all about summarizing those groups or labels so that I can better understand the categories in which people fall in. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into an example so that you guys can see how this works. Now is a great time to pause the video and to give this question a try. So the McCutcheon House is a restaurant operated by students in the School of Hospitality and Tourism Management at the University of South Carolina. Guests are invited to complete a short survey at the end of their meal, rating their overall dining experience using the following 5-point scale: either excellent, very good, good, fair, or poor. And during 1 week, 32 guests responded to the survey. So in this case, the 32 guests represents our sample. It's the people that we have data collected on. And then we have 24 guests said that their experience was either excellent or very good. And we would like to find the sample proportion of guests who responded this way. So our answer is going to be this sample proportion. So I'm going to talk real quickly about how we represent, what symbol we use to represent the sample proportion. It's going to be a lowercase p with a triangular hat on top, so we call that p hat. And we calculate it by saying x, which is the number of people who responded the particular way, and divide it by n, which is going to be our sample size. And so one important fact about this is that this answer should always be less than or equal to 1. It should never be bigger than 1. That's because we always are going to put the sample size, which is the total number of people we have data collected on, underneath. It's going to go on the bottom, and then the people who responded the way we want is going to go on top. And so in this case, we have 24 people who responded by saying their service was excellent or good, and we had 32 people who responded in total. So if I take 24 divided by 32 and I plug that into my calculator, I'm going to get 0.75, and that's going to be our final answer. That is our sample proportion. Now I will mention that some people are going to be interested in going one step further and writing it as a percentage and saying that it's 75%. They're just going to move that decimal place 2 places over. And while that is a true statement, I definitely prefer writing it as a decimal. We'll talk more about that later on. But I definitely think writing it as a decimal is important. Percentage is still technically correct, but decimals are the better answer here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and keep the context the same, and I'm going to just describe the data a little bit differently. I'm going to show you this table here that shows the same information just a little bit differently. Notice up here at the very top from StatCrunch's output, we have the total, which is 32. Now, I will mention that in a lot of situations, people will put a total row down here at the very bottom and do that instead. It's still correct either way you do it. I'm just following the way StatCrunch did it because that's the software we have. But you could, if you're putting this in a report or in a paper, you can put a total row down there at the bottom. We also have a column that talks all about the categories, so excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor. We have a column about frequency, so that could be one table. You could just have the categories and then the frequency. What this says is that there were 15 people who said that their experience was excellent. We have 9 people who said that their experience was very good, 4 people said good, 3 people said fair, and 1 person said poor. We have one more column. Again, you could just have the column with categories and then a column with relative frequency. What they did there was they took 15 and divided it by 32 to get 0.46875. So notice the relative frequency is the exact same thing as our sample proportion. So that's all they did is found the sample proportion for each category. So the next one they did was they did 9 divided by 32 and got 0.28125. Then it did 4 divided by 32, 3 divided by 32, and 1 divided by 32. So that's how they got all of those. And the last column is the percent. So all they did was they took that relative frequency and wrote it as a percentage. So 0.46875 turns into 46.875%. So you can always have just the category column and any one of these, or I always like having the frequency and the relative frequency together. Percentage is optional. For other descriptions of this data set, we can make a bar graph, which is on the left, and we can make a pie chart, which is on the right. I personally prefer the bar graph for two reasons. Number one, you can more easily see the frequency. Notice that this tallest bar, which is the excellent group, is 15. The next one down is about 9. The next one down is about 4. So not only can you see difference in group sizes, but you can also see how big each group actually was. That's kind of lost in the pie chart because you can really only compare one group to another. Pie charts do have their advantages, but I would definitely say in this one we have a problem, which is the smallest group actually got cut off and doesn't have a label. That's the people who responded and said that their overall experience was poor. And so that's a downside of having lots of categories. Pie charts are really good when you don't have very many categories. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on to one more example, and you can pause here and try these problems on your own. But so what I've done is I said decide whether each observation is true or false, and I've gone ahead and given you that table one more time so you can kind of see what's going on. So the first one says the rating poor was given by the second smallest number of guests. Well, if I go up and I look, we're talking about, in this case, this frequency column. Well, if I see the frequency of poor, there's only one person who said that their overall experience was poor. That is, in fact, the smallest, not the second smallest number of guests. So this is going to be a false observation. That being said, we'll go on to the next one. And the next one says the most common rating was excellent, which was given by almost half of guests. So the most common and was almost half of guests. So we're going to look up here and we're going to look for excellent. And it is, in fact, the most common rating because it has the most people who responded that way. And if I go over here, look at the relative frequency of the percentage, I can see that it is almost half. It's almost 50% of the guests who responded that way. So we'll say that it is true. It's at 46 or 47%. That's pretty close to half. For part C, we have more guests rated their experience as fair than good. So I want to focus on the fair and good, and it says more guests said fair. Let's see. So if I look at fair, we had 3 people, and if I look at good, we have 4 people. Well, that's not more guests said fair. That's more guests said good. So that is going to be a false statement. And the last one says more than 25% of guests gave a very good rating. So we'll look up here. Let me erase this real quick. We are looking at more than, so something bigger than 25% gave a very good rating. So let's look at very good. We'll go over here to percentages. The percentage is 28%, so this is true. More than 25%, a total of 28% gave a very good rating. And now that I've got that covered, let's just give a quick recap. So ways we can describe one categorical variable. We really like using sample proportions as a summary value. We can have 3 different columns for our summary table, either frequencies, relative frequencies, or percentages. You can choose any or all of them. And for summary pictures, I definitely prefer bar charts or bar graphs. They're my favorite. Pie charts are also very good. They're very helpful. And I hope to see you guys in the next one.